What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rovardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And today, they have the NFL owners' meetings going on, some rule changes in the NFL, interesting stuff taking place, and a lot of head coaches and GMs doing interviews and press conferences, and a lot of main takeaways for the New York Giants in this upcoming NFL draft. We're hearing things from the Chargers head coach Jim Harbaugh talking about J.J. McCarthy and how he's heard that sounds like there's going to be 4 quarterbacks off the board to start the draft. We also heard from New England Patriots head coach Gerard Mayo talking about maybe trading down now and being comfortable with Jacoby Brissett as their starting quarterback. So all these different things, these moving parts, they all factor into the Giants equation with the number 6 overall pick. Or if the Giants want to trade up or do something else in the draft, there's a lot of shifting of the tides right now in the NFL, so to speak, and a lot of stuff going on here as we inch closer, now 1 month away from the 2024 NFL draft. So we want to go ahead, unpack some of these quotes and talk about what this draft might look like for the Giants and how some of these different changing variables will impact their draft. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your thoughts on some of the things that we're hearing right now about the NFL draft?
I'm doing pretty good. And look, the Giants, obviously, I honestly, this draft couldn't come fast enough. I'm so tired of the back and forth about everything, but, we have to do it. And obviously, as you mentioned, the head coach kind of meeting this morning, and lots of interesting things going on and lots of interesting comments, specifically Jim Harbaugh coming out and talking about J.J. McCarthy, what makes him the best quarterback in the draft, according to him. Of course, a little bit of bias there. I think that's important to note. But, he kind of talked about his parents. I found that to be really interesting, Anthony. I know you're going to like this a lot. He talked about his parents and what qualities he gained from them. He talked about his father and how J.J. McCarthy's father is a competitor, kind of a larger-than-life persona. Has this character of he's really outgoing, has a lot of confidence, and his mother's like a stone cold killer, like someone that's really down to earth, but she's quiet, she listens and she acts accordingly. And he says that J.J. McCarthy's kind of the combination of those two in terms of parenting. And he indicated parenting is a lot, and it can be the difference between a great person and a bad person, as you probably can imagine. And according to Jim Harbaugh, he has some great parents in terms of J.J. McCarthy, and he's gotten a lot of the great tools from them. So that's helped him. And, he's 21 years old, a lot of potential there. I know a lot of people do not like him at the 6th overall pick, let alone at number 4 or 3. But, I think it's time for us to start wrapping our heads around the idea that it's possible, right? It's certainly possible. Where are the positives? How can we... And look, you guys know, I love Jaden Daniels. I'd rather have Drake May or Jaden Daniels over J.J. McCarthy every single day. That's my perspective. That's my preference. However, with that being said, there's a very real world where the J.J. McCarthy is a giant this time next month. And I need to start thinking to myself, okay, where can I find the positives in this equation? I liked what Jim Harbaugh had to say about his parenting. I liked what he had to say about the character tools he does have in terms of his confidence and, the way he operates in the way that no matter where he is, if it's a small market, if it's New York, he's going to operate the same. Whether it's cold, whether it's hot, he's going to play his best ball, and he operates like a pro-style quarterback. So I'm trying to find the positives here. We're also going to talk about the 3rd overall pick with Gerard Mayo essentially coming out and saying, yeah, drafting a quarterback is certainly a priority. It's certainly something that we want to do, but we are open for business. We're listening to calls. We're not doing what Dave Gettleman did a couple years ago and just did not pick up the phone. We're going to actually actively listen and see if anybody is willing to give us something that actually makes sense. And if the Giants say to themselves, well, we're at 6th overall, the draft comes around to the New England Patriots spot, and the guy that they want, let's say Drake May goes 2 and Jaden Daniels is there at 3, or vice versa, and they love one of those two guys, we know Joe Schoen likes to be aggressive. We know he's not afraid to trade draft capital to move up. If they find a guy that they love and they're willing to make the move and risk it all, I don't think Joe Schoen's going to stop himself from doing that. Look, the truth is this. If you get the quarterback that can change your franchise for the next decade, you make the move. No, even if it costs you a couple first-round picks, because a franchise quarterback, a great quarterback, will make everybody on this team better. They'll make this team competent. They'll make this team competitive. It covers up not having a first-round pick. And then, of course, we know exactly how it goes when it comes to resetting the salary space from a rookie contract. But, Anthony, what are your thoughts on Jim Harbaugh really giving a lot of positives to J.J. McCarthy? Of course, there's bias, but there was some good takeaways in terms of his character and the type of qualities he does have that do translate to the NFL level.
Yeah, I mean, I think JJ McCarthy has a lot of traits that translate to the NFL level. And I thought the quote that really stood out to me from Jim Harbaugh was when he said that JJ McCarthy plays quarterback the best of any of the quarterbacks. He didn't say necessarily that he's the best player in this draft or the most talented. He said he plays quarterback better than the other quarterbacks in this draft. And you can argue that he is right about that because JJ McCarthy at Michigan did play in a pro style offense, executed it really well, basically played like an NFL quarterback during his collegiate career. So when you compare that to some of these other guys like Caleb Williams or Drake May, Jaden Daniels, did they really play quarterback? Did they play NFL style quarterback at the highest level? I think that with Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, these guys have higher ceilings, higher tools, they're better prospects, right? Because they have all of this potential. But in terms of who has actually played the quarterback role in an NFL way the best, you could argue that JJ McCarthy has done that. But again, when you're comparing him to some of these other prospects, he does fall short in other regards. And then the other quote that I liked from Harbaugh about McCarthy was that he becomes a killer when he reaches adversity. I thought that was cool. That's exactly what you want to hear. There's been question marks about how will JJ McCarthy respond once he gets into a losing situation. Harbaugh says he's going to turn into a killer, and I think that's cool stuff. And again, you're right. There is bias involved because he was his head coach during the time at Michigan. But now going on to greener pastures, Harbaugh is with the Los Angeles Chargers. And JJ McCarthy started a new chapter of his career, now entering the NFL. It's going to be interesting to see where he lands. I don't know if he's going to be a top 3 pick or a top 6 pick, but he's definitely going inside the top 10. And I'm excited to see where he lands. And if he does end up with the New York Giants, I will be excited about it. I think there is a lot to like about McCarthy. But then the other half of what you talked about, Alex, with that number 3 overall pick, that's what you really got to keep an eye on if you're the New York Giants. That's the pick that we've been talking about for seemingly months now. We wanted the Giants to trade up to 3 a long time ago. We still want it to happen. How likely is it to happen? I'm not so sure. I think that Gerard Mayo is putting it out there and keeping it on the table. But if you read all the other reports and rumors, it sounds like the Patriots are pretty intent on drafting a quarterback at number 3 overall. But if that pick does become available on draft night and they're saying, okay, we can go down to 6, still land a blue chip prospect, get some extra draft capital from the Giants, and maybe the Giants move up and take their quarterback. That's totally possible. And in that point, what are the Giants giving up, though? I think that's the important talking point there because on draft night, those trades, there's going to be a lot of teams trying to get into that number 3 spot. What would the Giants have to give up to move up 3 spots and take their quarterback is the big question for me. And I think that not having that additional second round pick after trading it for Brian Burns makes it a little bit difficult to see how the Giants can move up to number 3 overall. I think we are talking about potentially sacrificing a 2025 first round pick, which is a tough bridge to sell. I mean, that's a lot of capital and it's a pretty tough decision to move up 3 spots and give up a future first for that move, but it might, in the end, be worth it for the New York Giants if they do land their franchise quarterback. And I like the point that you made, Alex, talking about Joe Shane. His career history is very clear how he operates on draft night. If he sees a guy within striking distance, he makes the deal to go get him. That's always been his MO when he was the assistant GM of the Buffalo Bills. The Bills traded up twice, similar to what the Minnesota Vikings are doing. They traded up twice to move up into the top 10 and take Josh Allen back in 2018. Joe Shane was the one making those phone calls for GM Brandon Beane as his assistant, making those phone calls, negotiating those deals, and really just crafting the situation for the Buffalo Bills to move up and get Josh Allen. So if you've seen it in that pass, Joe Shane loves to be aggressive, move up, get his quarterback. But how about even more recently, during his time with the New York Giants? How about last year, picking 25th overall? Did the Giants stick and pick? No, they heard that there was chatter. Some teams were trying to move up and jump them for Deonte Banks. They said, screw that. We're moving up 1 spot and we're taking Deonte Banks. We've got a few extra draft picks to spare, so we're going to move up and make sure that nobody steals our prospect. So what we know about Joe Shane, he is aggressive. If there's somebody that he wants, he will strike. He will go get that guy, including Jalen Hyatt. They traded up for Jalen Hyatt in the 3rd round, made sure that they got their guy. So if the draft board is falling the right way for the Giants, and maybe the guy that they like is available at 3, and the 3rd overall pick is available for trade, I expect Joe Shane to be aggressive, move up, and try to get his guy. But it is also entirely possible that he doesn't want to draft a quarterback and doesn't want to sacrifice those picks. And maybe the Giants do just land a blue chip prospect with the number 6 overall pick, which is very likely. And at this point, it's becoming more likely because it sounds like quarterbacks are going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So then it's 5 and 6. The 2 best prospects in this class outside of the quarterback position should be going in those spots. The Giants could very well be landing one of the 2 best players in the entire draft class. So, Alex, how do you feel about that? Obviously, there's this opportunity here potentially for the Giants to move up to number 3. We'll see if the Patriots decide to trade it. But if they don't, sticking and picking at number 6, they're going to get a tremendous talent regardless. How do you feel about that? I know that's exciting, obviously, but is it more exciting to you, the idea of maybe trading up and landing that quarterback, or are you more excited by the fact that if the Giants do stick and pick, they might be getting the best prospect, overall prospect outside of the quarterback position in the draft class?
Well, I wish the Giants had a quarterback because I really liked what Harbaugh had to say in that the 5th overall pick is basically like picking number 1. If the first 4 picks go off the board, they have Justin Herbert. They're set in stone with their guy. They're basically getting the best player in this draft that's not a quarterback at number 5 if 4 guys go off the board early. So the Giants, like, I actually think there's an increasing likelihood that if the Giants stay at 6, that Marvin Harrison Jr. could be there at 6, which is kind of crazy, right? Because Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., you look at what the Chargers like, they want that downfield receiver. They want that explosive playmaker. That's Malik Neighbors, right? They could have him rated higher than Marvin Harrison Jr., who did not practice at his pro day, nor show up to the NFL Combine and practice. I think he even skipped his freaking meeting. So, like you see some of these little things that I don't think he has anything to prove. I think, Harrison Jr. is awesome. He's phenomenal. He's going to be a really great receiver in the NFL. But Malik Neighbors did himself some big favors, man. I mean, he looks just tremendous, and he's a great kid too. He loved what the Giants had to say to him, and there's a real chance the Giants are sitting there at 6, don't go quarterback, and they get their pick of whoever the Chargers don't select, which could be Marvin Harrison Jr. or it could be Malik Neighbors. And the truth is this, Anthony, I think this is kind of an underrated kind of idea here, is that you look at the Cardinals, right? They're the team that could trade back for, a team looking to move up for a quarterback. Why does it make sense for the Giants, and why do the Giants have more leverage? Well, look, aside from J.J. McCarthy, let's assume this is not even for J.J. McCarthy. It could be for Drake May because, the way that McCarthy's stock is rising, there's a real possibility that he could go as a QB3 in this draft. I think it's not out of the realm of possibility. So if we're thinking about that in terms of what the Giants can do here, having the 6th overall pick is super valuable. Why? Because if you're the Vikings and you want to move up and you trade with the Cardinals now know they're missing out on Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison Jr. They're going to have to settle for a player that's not one of those 3 receivers, most likely. If you're the Giants, why is that good for you? Well, the Giants have the 6th overall pick, so you say, all right, Cardinals, we'll move up to 4. We don't have to give up a ton comparably to what the Vikings will have to give up, and you're going to have your choice of Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. You're still going to walk away with your bona fide superstar receiver at 6th overall. Whereas if you move back to 11, you're not getting any of those guys. You're losing all the top 3 receivers. So I think that leverage the Giants do have over the Cardinals is something that could play a big role here in saying, we want that pick, but we also know you want the top blue chip receiver. We can give you that guy. You can't get that at 11. And I think that is a narrative that needs to be floated out there and something that I think does hold a lot of value. And, Anthony, I'll let you get your take on that in terms of just the value of getting that blue chip receiver, I think is, something the Cardinals desperately want. They've been mocked Marvin Harrison Jr. for months now. This is nothing new, but they could land him or Neighbors at 6 and still get a stupendous amount of draft capital from the Giants. They might get the 2025 first round pick and the receiver. Why not do that instead of moving back to 11 and 23 and missing out on the top guys that you really want to provide Kyler Murray with?
Yeah, it's totally possible. And listen, the Giants don't have the draft capital that the Vikings have to persuade these teams to trade down, but they have the draft positioning, which is the point that you're making, and that I agree with. And that's why it might be enticing for the Cardinals to look down the board and say, hey, we'd love to trade down, add some more picks, but we want to get that blue chip wide receiver, so we don't want to go down too far. And that's where the Giants come into play. And I think you make a good point there in saying that because, listen, the Giants picking number 6 overall, it's a perfect spot if you want a wide receiver in this draft class. The Cardinals are also in a perfect spot, but they're also in a perfect spot to trade down. All those teams want quarterbacks with the first 4 picks. Cardinals don't need one. They could move down 2 spots, still land the wide receiver that they maybe wanted at number 4, and get a whole bunch of draft capital in addition. But there is a counter argument that I would make, Alex, where if the Giants are sitting there at 6 and the Cardinals don't want to trade all the way down to 11, what stops the Giants from saying, okay, we're going to call your bluff, don't trade down then. You're going to stick and pick at 4, and we're going to hope that quarterback falls in our lap at number 6. I think that the Giants could try and do something like that. Now, again, that kind of goes against what we were saying. We feel like if Joe Schoen sees a guy on the board, he's going to trade up. He's going to be aggressive. but there is a chance that he kind of calls the bluff of these teams around the NFL and says, I think all of you want to trade. I don't think any of you are actually going to trade. Maybe this quarterback prospect is going to just fall in my lap with the number 6 overall pick. I do think it's possible. It's so rare that quarterbacks actually come off the board 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know when the last time that's happened. Usually we hear this stuff. We hear a lot of this. We hear quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all the time leading up to the draft. And then we get to the night of the draft, and usually at least one or two of those guys falls down the board, maybe even makes it outside of the top 10. I don't think that happens this year, but I do think it's within the realm of possibility that those teams saying at 4 and 5 that they want to trade down, maybe they don't really want to trade down and lose out on some of those top prospects. Maybe they stick and pick, and maybe J.J. McCarthy or whichever quarterback is going to be fourth off the board does fall into the Giants' lap with the number 6 overall pick in the draft. I do think it's still possible. However, it is more likely that the Giants will need to move up. And again, you make a good point, because if I were the Patriots, do I want to go from pick 3 to 11? That's a pretty big drop off in talent. Even 4 to 11, you're missing out on significant talent with those prospects that you're trading down and away from if you're the Cardinals. But again, the point is, if you move from 3 to 6 or 4 to 6, if you're one of those two teams, you're still landing a blue chip wide receiver, but you're getting some extra draft capital. And again, the question now is, what do the Giants have to give up to move up those 2 to 3 spots? How much are they giving up, and how much are they willing to give up? That's going to be the major question, because I do think there is a world where one of those two teams wants to move down on draft night, and Joe Schoen's going to call, and he's going to see what the price tag is, but how far is he willing to go? It's not like the Giants just don't have a QB on the roster. It's like they do have Daniel Jones, and they claim to still believe that he could be a capable starter in this league. So are the Giants willing to sacrifice future first-round picks for a quarterback? I'm not sure, but of course we'll find that out on draft night. It's going to be really interesting to monitor, but you do make some good points there, Alex, where these teams definitely want to trade down, but how far are they willing to go? But I do want to get your take on the other half of that equation, where what if the Giants say, stick and pick. We're going to trust that you don't want to trade down that far, and we're going to try and manipulate this board and have this quarterback fall into our laps with the number 6 overall pick. Do you also see that still being an outside possibility, or do you feel confident that the only way the Giants get a quarterback in the first round is if they trade up for one?
At this point, I'm not so sure that we're going to be able to stick and pick and wait it out and find a quarterback at 6. I think teams are positioning themselves to move up. It's not just the Vikings. There are other teams, like the Raiders are a team that I would be a little bit concerned about too. They could use a quarterback. I don't think they're really confident Gardner Minshew's leading them to the playoffs. So it's like, you got to be proactive. If you're Joe Schoen right now and you're the Giants, and you think that there's a guy that could flip the script here and add competition and add future success, you'd be aggressive, man. I mean, look, you're not going up to number 1 overall. You're not going up to number 2 overall. You're going up to number 4, most likely overall, which means you're not giving 3 first-round picks away. You're giving either your second-round pick, or you're giving away next year's first-round pick. And look, the truth is simple. No one's going to give a rat's ass about next year's first-round pick when we have $30 million in extra money to spend and a young quarterback with the upside to be a franchise passer with, tremendous potential. I don't know who that's going to be. I'm not writing in J.J. McCarthy right now. I'm not saying it's anybody. I'm saying if the guy is there that they like, that they think can be that good. And for what it's worth, J.J. McCarthy may not be my preference, but I'll tell you one thing. If Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen think that he's the guy, they're a lot better football minds than me, you, and any of us watching this right now are talking about it. So I'm going to go with they probably know more than us about it. I'm going to trust their instincts. I'm going to trust their gut. Brian Daboll, Drew Lock just said it a couple weeks ago. Brian Daboll's a wizard when it comes to quarterbacks. I'm going to let the wizard freaking do it. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know more than Brian Daboll, because I sure as hell don't. So if they think he's the guy, I'll give them that respect and that time to make it, prove it to us that he can become that special talent. But with that being said, I do think they're going to have to move up to 4, and if it takes a next year's first-round pick, I'm okay with it, because the rookie window resetting is going to be fine. You keep that 47th overall pick, and worst case, you move that 47th overall pick, you keep your first-rounders and draft picks next year, and I think you're okay, and you can live with that, right? You can survive with that. This draft is so deep. That 47th overall pick, you can get arguably a first-round talent there. You know what I mean? Xavier Legette in another draft is a first-round talent. You can get some really good players. Chop Robinson, who knows? Maybe he ends up slipping to 47. You never know. There's guys in this draft. It's so deep. You're going to get a starting-level player at 47 that would be a first-round pick in another weaker draft class. So, I think that it's important to note that. And the Giants probably feel as though they have a good amount of leverage right now. But yes, I do think we're going to have to trade up to get a quarterback. But if you don't, getting Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr., by the way, I was just reading, Marvin Harrison Jr. was doubled more than any receiver in college football last year with almost a 17% double rate. Holy crap. Like, that type of attention that you command, that's like what OBJ used to get. You know what I mean? Like, you'd have to double OBJ to stop him, and that means you have a safety out of alignment. You have another cornerback out of alignment. You have some defensive back that's drawing attention away, and you can. That's where guys like Wan'Dale Robinson step in and make an impact. That's where your running game gets an impact, and play action is more effective. So there's lots of ways that a top receiver can open up an offense, and especially if you end up keeping Darren Waller and you have a Malik Neighbors or a Marvin Harrison Jr., think about the opportunities here. I know the first comments right now are, who's throwing him the football? Guys, if you draft Malik Neighbors this is the best way I can say it. If you're wondering who's throwing the football to Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., or Rome Odunze, these guys are under contract for 5 years. This is not about 2024. The Giants could find their quarterback in 2 years from now, and they're going to have a young player on their rookie contract with a 5th-year option and 3 years left of control before they hit free agency. So this is not about next season. This is about the future. So yes, am I going to be upset we didn't get a quarterback? Probably. Am I going to be upset we got Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze or Marvin Harrison Jr.? Absolutely freaking not. Not a shot. I'm going to be ecstatic about getting those guys because it's about the future, and we can still find our quarterback long term. I think that's kind of the best way I can describe my perspective if we don't land a quarterback in this draft class.
Yeah, listen, there's always going to be another opportunity down the road, whether it's the one that we want, whether it's the guy that we want, who knows? But of course, if the Giants are not able to find that quarterback in the first round, maybe they take a flyer on somebody in the middle rounds and he pans out. You can't rule that out of the equation. Maybe they wait for next offseason, make a splash trade, kind of like the Jets did last season for Aaron Rodgers. Maybe there's another quarterback that comes available in free agency, like Kirk Cousins just went to the Atlanta Falcons this offseason. It's totally possible that the Giants will find a new situation for a quarterback next offseason if they can't get one this offseason. However, I do expect them to be aggressive. I think that they're going to try their best to move up into those top spots and take a QB. But again, it's easier said than done. Takes two to tango. I'm still not convinced that the Patriots are going to trade down, and I think that the Vikings maybe are better position to move up in front of the Giants. But we'll see how it goes. Of course, a lot of changes happening in the NFL, and a lot of rumors keep getting spread, and a lot of different tidbits of information that we receive about this quarterback class and about this draft in general. And of course, we're going to continue to update you guys on everything regarding the NFL draft, the New York Giants, all that stuff in between right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we will catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.